of materials used in this project, check out the description below and click on Show More. There's some other good stuff down there, so you'll want to make sure you check it out. I'm going to start by laying out the colors in my pattern in the order in which I'm going to pick them up. So I've got my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 colors, and you can do as many or as few colors as you want, but you're going to lay them out in the order that you want them to appear in your pattern. You can see here I have my sample, and so my sample first row matches what I have here. I'm going to start working with my A color or my first color and work to the end here. Pick up a stop bead, and your stop bead can be the first color that you're working with. So you can use stop bead, and your first bead of the project can be the same one. We'll start with that stop bead, and then we'll pick up pairs of every color. So my stop bead counts as 1, and then I have one of these beads here, another one of the same color, followed by pairs of each color after. So you can see that what I have here exactly matches what I have on my thread. I'm using a size 6 thread, 6 dragon thread, because I want something that's going to allow the fringe at the bottom to move freely. And so a thinner cord, especially one like a dragon thread, is going to work really well for that. If this is the full width that you like for your project, for your earring, you can leave it just like that. Because I want to make it a little bit wider, I'm going to then pick up 2 more of my A color. And I'm picking up my A color instead of any other color because I'm always going to work in this order. I'm working my A color to B, C, D, E, F, and then back to A. So after my F color, I'm going right back to A. So now that you've got all the beads on that you want for the width here of your project, we're going to start working this pattern in a square stitch. You're going to pick up your beads, and your thread should be coming out the last 2, which is your A bead. And I'm going to pick up 2 more of my A bead. I'm going to take my needle and go through the 2 A beads that are on my first row. And I'm taking my needle away from my stop bead. So I'm starting at the second to last bead and then going through the last bead. And as I pull my thread, those 2 new beads that I added will sit directly next to the beads that I just ran through on the first row here. I'm going to take my needle and thread and go through the beads that I just added. And then I'm going to go to my next color. So on the second row here, I'm just picking up the same color as the beads that next to where I'm working. Skip 2 of these orangey beads. And again, going the same direction with my needle and thread, going away from my stop bead. Go just through that pair of the same color. And give it a nice tight tug there. And allow my thread to sit between the 2 colors there, the 2 pairs. And I'm going to go up through the pair that I just added. So one more time here. I'm going to pick up a pair of beads in the same color that I'm going to add the beads next to. So I have this open space here next to the blue beads here. So I'm going to pick up 2 blue, and I'm going to go through those through those beads, through that pair, away from my stop bead. So I'm coming towards me. And then my thread, my needle and thread, I'll go up through the 2 beads that I just added. And I'm letting this thread that's sitting between the beads here, I'm going to let it sit between the pairs. So I just want to make sure that it's not getting caught on any of the other beads. And I'm going to continue to work this way until I get to the opposite end here. So once we get there, I'll start working the other way, and I'll show you how to do that. I've now gone all the way to the end of my first row, adding a second pair of seed beads in the same color next to the pair of seed beads that are in the first row here. So I've gone all the way down to the end, and I have these little squares of 4 colors of the same color seed bead. So now I'm going to start working the opposite direction, and I'm going to start working away from my stop bead. We picked up our beads, and then we started doing the square stitch working towards our stop bead, and now we're going to flip it and work away from the stop bead to the other side of the project. I'm also going to change the pattern here. So if you can see at my little sample here, I'm going to work it in like a diagonal pattern. So to do that, it's very, very simple. All I'm going to do is, instead of picking up the color that I'm adding the beads next to, I'm going to pick up the color next in the pattern. So here, coming out of my A color, I'll pick up my B color instead. So picking up 2 of those B colors, and again going through the beads. And this time, because I've flipped my project, my needle and thread are going towards my stop bead as I run through my pair of beads. And then up through the 2 new beads that I added. And I have my B, or for me, it's this yellow color. So instead of picking up the yellow, I'm going to pick up this pink color. So I'm just shifting the pattern over by 1. So same exact technique, same exact stitch, just shifting my colors over by 1 as I work in this direction. And then you'll start to see that you're getting this diagonal pattern forming. So I'm going to continue to the end here, and then we'll work our way back. I now finished my first row where I offset it, and I've moved my pattern down or over by one bead or 1 color. So now I'm ready to flip it and continue working back the other way. Since I'm doing sets of 2 and I'm doing 2 rows with the same bead next to each other, I'm going to do the other row, or the new row that I'm working on, that I'm starting now. I'm going to do that row following the same rule as I did for the second row. So when I pick up my first set of beads here, I'm going to pick up this first, or the same color as the beads where my thread is coming out. So in this way, by following this pattern, I'm going to get little squares, or little rectangles, probably more accurately, little rectangles of each color. And I'll have 2 pairs of each bead. Oops, that was the wrong color, this color. 2 pairs of each bead next to each other. So again, on this row, on my even and all even rows, I'll be picking up the same color. I'll be adding the same color to the color on the row on the previous row. On odd rows, I'll be switching up my pattern here, and I'll be picking up one down. So I'm going to continue here. And again, because this is an even number row, I'm simply picking up the same color bead as the bead that I'm going to add these beads next to. And you can see here after a few, that I've added yellow next to my yellow, my beige next to my beige, and my peach next to my peach. So I'll continue the same way until I get to the end. Okay, so you might have already guessed it. Now that I am done with my 4th row, I'm going to go ahead and flip this again. So I'm working, because I like working always in the same direction. So I'm going to flip this and I'm going to offset my pattern again. So I have my little squares here. I have 2 rows of my pairs where they are matched up. And then I have another 2 rows here where my pairs are matched up. I started my last couple rows with the with this bee color. For me, it's this yellow color. So I'm going to now move down the row here, and I'm going to pick up my pink. And you can see it's just the one behind the color that I started with previously. So I'm just moving one bead, one color down. And I'm offsetting this row here with that color. So that's going to start creating more of a prominent diagonal. So I'm picking up 2 of those pink beads and going through the yellow and then back up through the pink. And so now the next bead will be my blue. So I'm always following that same color order. I'm just starting at different points in that color order as I work my odd number rows. And you can see what I'm doing here, just continuing this pattern and adding my 2 beads next to the pair in the previous row. So it's really a very basic, simple sort of technique. What makes this so interesting and so eye-catching is just the way that we play with the colors. So I'm going to go ahead and continue this. I'm going to finish this and make it the length that I need. And then I will add some fringe at the bottom to give it some more like bounce and movement to make it even more interesting. This is my finished design, at least this portion of it, my finished zigzag design. And so now you can see the overall pattern and see exactly how that offsetting that we did as we started with another row, or we started with another color at the beginning of the row, you can see how that makes a nice, bold and very striking pattern. I want to add some fringe to the bottom of this. Now you can do any number of things. You can bring it to a point. You can add some crystals or something at the end here, but I'm going to do a nice long fringe. I have a pair of earrings that I've been wearing that are like this for a while, and they're my go-to pair of earrings. I like the way that they sway and the way that they feel when those little beads hit up against your neck. Maybe some of you think that's a little funny, but it's just a really fun pair of earrings to wear. So I'm going to show you here how I did the fringe on the pair of earrings that I wear all the time. I did add a new piece of thread, and so you can easily do that by just using one of the beads at the very end here, your first bead, as a stop bead, and take that needle and thread through that bead once. Now I want to be coming out through my bead, that first bead here, but I want to be coming out with my thread. My thread should be coming out between the first and the second bead. Here it's the last and the second to last. If I flip it here, first and second bead. I'm going to pick up just a long series of beads in the color that matches this first bead. And I haven't really counted these as I've done them, but I did figure out that about 20 to 25 beads gives me the length that I like. But it's really going to be personal preference. But about 20 to 25 Maybe I should say 22-30 if you want something a little bit longer. And I also like to stagger the length so that it looks very organic and it doesn't look too much like it just got a haircut and everything is nice and perfect. Because part of what's so fun about wearing a pair of earrings like this is that it isn't perfect and it kind of sways around, has that movement. And so the staggered lengths kind of add to that appeal. So I have about 1 3/4 inches, maybe 2 inches or so here. And then I'm going to go back up through all those beads. I do need to, however, skip the last bead because that bead will be the one that holds everything on. And then I'll just carefully go back up through all the beads. And it's important that you don't skip a bead because you'll be able to see that. If your thread goes on the outside of any of these beads, it'll push the bead away from the other beads, and so you'll see like an obvious little dent or one little bead sticking out to the side. So pull it tight enough so that you don't have any slack, but you don't want to pull it too tight because it is going to move freely, and so you don't want to choke it. You want to just make sure that you don't see any extra thread, and if it seems like it's dangling and it's moving freely, you're okay. So now I'm going to go through the bead that's on my last row here. I'm going to go through my first and through my second bead. And that will center this one piece of fringe on that first bead. So what we're doing here is we're coming out through, if you're looking at it this direction with me, the bead that we're coming out of on the left side, we're picking up all our beads for the fringe, going back up, and then going back through that bead from the right to the left side. So what that does is, like I said, it centers the fringe on that bead by starting on the left and then circling back around and going from the right to the left through that bead. So here I go again, adding some fringe. And I'm going to do it in the same color. And like I said, I don't really count. I just like to visually see how long they are. You can if you want to. If you want to do them all exactly the same, you can count, but you can also get a ruler. Sometimes seed beads have enough of a difference in their width that simply counting them could mean that you don't get the exact same length, because the varying widths, you might get some thicker beads in one length, and so it may actually not equate to the same length as the other because the beads vary. So I'm good with that. A little difference of 3 or 4 beads. That's about what I'm going to be doing the whole way around, or the whole way down. And again, I just need to skip that last bead and work my way through all the others. And remember, as we get to the top here, our thread came out the left side of the bead that we're adding this fringe to. So we're going to go from the right to the left through that bead. And that will position our fringe so that it is centered on that bead. Now as I pass through the next bead in that last row, which is my yellow bead here, I'll go through that bead so I'm coming out on the left side. And then I'll do the same thing. I'll pick up a series of yellow beads, however long I want them, come back up and go right to left through that same bead. And then of course I'll continue the whole way around, or the whole way down, adding all the fringe in the color corresponding to the color of the bead that I'm adding the fringe to in this last row. So I'm going to continue with this, and then I'll show you what I have at the end. I've completed all of the fringe at the bottom, and you can see how it's kind of like a little dress or like a skirt here. And I love how all these different colors overlap and move along with each other, but they still kind of keep that striped appearance. And you can see these stripes are coming from these diagonal colors. And so that just makes a really nice visual appealing look to your earring, even at a distance. So the last thing we need to do to make this a functional earring is to add an attachment here for our ear wire. You're going to find the 2 center beads of your first row. For me, since I have an odd number of colors, the 2 center beads here are going to be the same color. I'm going to start by making one of these beads my stop bead and just go through that bead once and then once again, leaving just a little tail thread, and go through the next bead. So I'm coming out at the end of those 2 beads, between that bead and the next color. I'm going to pick up 4 beads of that color, and then I'm going to go through those 2 beads again, those 2 beads of the same color. So by picking up 4 beads, I'll have 2 beads on either side, and in the center here, I'll have a little gap where my bridge thread is, or it's really just that thread running through the beads. And my ear wire will sit nice and snugly in that little gap between my 2 sets of beads. So I'm going to reinforce this and go up through 2 beads and down through 2 beads. Very similar to what we were doing to make the neck, or to make the earring. Through my beads at the base, and then up through these beads again. I like to reinforce it 2 or 3 times, because that way you'll have at least 2 or 3 lengths or pieces of thread going through those beads, which will just make it stronger to hang your ear wire on. So now that I've got that nice little loop or little triangle there, I can simply take my ear wire, open that eye on the ear wire, hang it so that it sits right in the center there, and I am done. Now all I'll do here is just tie off my thread like I do on any other bead weaving project. And there's our beautiful, very fun, very frilly and fluid pair of earrings. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. Please leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts on the project. If you're also interested in more tutorials just like this one, click on that subscribe button so that you're notified as soon as we have new videos available.